Welcome to Storytime with Tallulah. Today's reading comes from r/MaliciousCompliance. Our first story is titled, I have to show up at 8:30 no matter what the schedule says. You got it. I was working for a child care center while I was in college. We staggered staff in and staggered them out so that we were always fully staffed when all the kids were there, and they all had various arrival and leaving times, so staff could be scheduled to arrive anytime between 7:30 a.m. and 2 p.m. I worked Monday through Friday, 8:30 to 4:30. Even though my schedule was fairly permanent, I would check the schedule that got sent out every Sunday evening. It would always get sent between 6 and 9 p.m. and it would be for that current week, so we had less than 24 hours notice for our weekly schedule. A hot mess express if you ask me, but I'm not in charge and my schedule is set so I don't raise too much heck about it. One week I get the schedule and it says that my arrival time is 9 a.m. instead of the usual 8:38 for the entire week. I figure they're trying to make minor cuts and they're really having everyone under the full-time threshold, so I just assumed they were barely cutting my hours so they could get away with it. No big deal, but I knew that most of the kids arrived at 9, so I would need more time to set up. I get there at 8:45 on Monday and set up quickly and go about my day. I do a little prep Monday night so I don't have as much prep in the morning. So on Tuesday, I get there at 8:55, clock in and begin my day. My week goes on like that with me prepping in the evening and getting there at 8:55 until Thursday when my boss calls me into the office and reprimands me for my tardiness. I tell her the schedule tells me that my arrival time is 9, so I'm actually arriving early every day. She says that the schedule says 9 just to indicate that you are the morning shift, but if you are scheduled for classroom time, you need to arrive at 8:30 regardless of what the schedule says, so you have time to set up the classroom. I don't agree with this at all, and it's obviously not true that not everyone arrives at 8:30 anyway. There has to be more distinction than just morning crew versus afternoon crew on the schedule. But she admits that she's partially to blame for the mix-up and doesn't turn it into a formal write-up. I start arriving at 8:30 every morning, just like I had been before the week in question. I'm not a late person. One week, I was going to be scheduled for the 1 to 6:30 shift because another coworker needed to switch with me, and we had both agreed to this. So the schedule comes out and says my arrival time is 1 p.m. I arrive exactly 8:30, clock in, and sit my pretty butt in the office chair and wait. Well, eventually, my boss notices that I'm just hanging out in the office and asks what I'm doing. I say, well, I was told to arrive promptly at 8:30 no matter what the schedule says, so here I am. She says, we don't need you here for the morning so you can clock out and come back when your shift begins. Nope. I say, you can find a task for me to do until my shift at 1 starts, or I can sit here. But I'm staying clocked in. You were the one that said that I have to be here at 8:30 no matter what. I'm just following your instructions. I had to deep clean the entire school until my shift actually started, but it was so worth it because I still got paid for the whole day and my boss had to admit to me that she was full of it. Watching her try to backtrack was the funniest thing that had ever happened to me. Well, I'm glad you got that cleared up. Well, our next story is titled, Get the Crickets You Pay For. I work in a small local pet store where we sell crickets. We sell cricket cards. They are basically a card that has a given 250 crickets. The cards are $20 and you save quite a bit of money by using them. Customers would tell us how many crickets and what size, and we would go get them and scratch off the amount of crickets wanted. The bugs are bought in increments of 10. So someone couldn't get 15 crickets, but had to get 10 or 20. One day, I had a lady come in and ask for 20 large crickets. I ran and got them and handed the bag of crickets to her. She stares at the bag for a few seconds and almost immediately blows up, yelling about how I had tried to rip her off, giving her less crickets than she ordered and all that. She said that she wanted to get exactly what she paid for. She wanted me to count them. Fine. I grabbed a pair of tongs and another bag and counted. She got 24 bugs. I apologized and took the extra 4 crickets. She started yelling that she wanted the few extra crickets. I just looked at her and, trying my hardest to keep a straight face, told her, you get exactly what you paid for. She turned a maroon color and stormed towards the door. She didn't know this, but we have 2 separate entrance and exit doors. She tried to exit the entrance door. I told her that the other door would let her out and to have a good day. I haven't seen her since. Customers can be funny sometimes, can't they? Our next story is titled, Impatient Professor? We'll just flood your WhatsApp group. I rarely use Reddit, but for the first time today, I was part of an active malicious compliance. Nothing special, but we had a good laugh about it, so here it goes. Sorry if my English is not perfect, it's not my first language. I am a student in Italy. Right now, we are all quarantined because of the pandemic, but universities are still holding lessons using Google Meet. We have been in contact with our professors during last week via email, WhatsApp, and stuff, and today at 9 a.m. we started our regular lessons as if class was in session. This morning, our main professor, the one holding the most important lesson of our course, sent an email around 10 a.m. telling us he'll be holding his lesson tomorrow. We already knew this because he had told us already multiple times in multiple emails, and in his message, he wasn't asking for a reply. He sent this while the whole class was already connected with another professor and following her lesson, so we didn't reply right away. After an hour, he sent another outraged email asking why no one had replied to his super important message yet, considering we are all home and with nothing to do. We were literally following another lesson, all of us. Cue the malicious compliance. 50 or 60 people replying. Sorry, professor, I was following lesson name. Got it? See you tomorrow. At the same time in our WhatsApp group. After the first 30, he just replied, okay, I got it, you made your point. I told you it was nothing special, but we are easily entertained during this quarantine. That is kind of funny though. He had it coming. Our next story is titled, I ignore customers because the boss said so. After graduating college, I worked for about 6 months as a cashier at a local branch of a chain sandwich shop. Mostly, it was a great job. Customers were mostly polite, my coworkers were friendly and helpful, and I genuinely believed in the company's products. Even my bosses were pretty great, except for one. We'll call him the jerk. The jerk was belligerent, vindictive, nitpicky, and pretty much an awful boss in every way a boss can be awful. He had the type of poopy, no excuses policy that defined excuse as literally anything besides, yes sir, of course sir. I could go on and on about all the different ways he was terrible, but this story is about one specific flavor of his awfulness. During our shifts, each employee had a certain section of the store they were assigned to keep clean in addition to their duties. The cashier section was the front counters and displays and the coffee kiosk. I don't know if it was officially the manager's job, but as long as I worked there, whoever was the shift manager always took care of the outside patio area, except for the jerk. At first, he would say things to me like, I'm really busy right now, could you clean the patio? Which was fine. Part of the job description stated that if you had free time and the manager asked you to do something extra, you did it. He was well within his rights. But one day, he suddenly started asking me why I was shirking my duties by not keeping the patio clean. After all, the patio was part of my section. It wasn't and never had been. I asked the other cashiers and they all agreed they'd never been told anything about the patio being part of the cashier section. I didn't mind helping out with the patio if my other cashier duties were done, but it irked me that he had taken something extra I was doing to be helpful and turned it into something that I was neglecting my duties if I didn't do. It felt like bait and switch, and I felt cheated. The big problem, though, was that keeping the patio clean through my entire shift was a huge pain for me as a cashier. In the afternoons, I was often the only one at the counter, and customers would trickle in with a few minutes between each group. This meant that I was constantly having to run back and forth between the patio and the register, which confused customers and made it hard to get any actual work done on the patio. One day, when this was particularly bad, the jerk came up front and started asking me why I hadn't cleaned the patio. I started to explain that I kept having to come back inside to serve customers, but he cut me off. I don't remember his exact words, but it was something along the lines of, that's no excuse, cleaning the patio is your job, now go outside and do your job. Don't come back inside until the patio is clean. The last sentence was music to my ears. I assured him that of course I would do exactly as he said, went outside and started cleaning. A few minutes later, a family walked past me through the front doors into the store. Through the large front window, I watched them stand confused in front of the register. There was no one at it to serve them. The jerk had gone back into his office to attend to his oh-so-important manager duties. I continued to clean the patio. A few minutes later, another family came in and joined the first, standing confused and now annoyed in front of the counter. At this point, the jerk must have noticed them on the security camera because he came out of his office and started ringing them up. Then came another set of customers, and another. The jerk was at the register, so he had to serve them. He was now being forced to cover my job because I was too busy doing his. I finished cleaning the patio and came inside, and the jerk immediately tore into me asking where I had been. Why wasn't I at the counter? Couldn't I see there were customers? I put on my most innocent smile. But you told me not to come back inside until I finished cleaning the patio. I assumed that meant you would take care of serving customers since I couldn't possibly be two places at the same time. He just glared at me for the longest moment, then mumbled something about how I should have known what he meant and I was never to pull a stunt like that again and shuffled back to his office. Not much of a victory in the grand scheme of things, but seeing the momentary flash of panic in his eyes as he realized his do as I say no excuses policy had backfired had me giddy for the rest of the day. Well, it sounds like he learned a lesson from that. Alright, our next and final story is titled, 2-Star General Gets Taken Down by a Young Private. Obligatory, not my story. This is from a retired Ranger friend of mine. When my friend was a young Ranger, he was stationed at the Special Operations Command Headquarters, HQ, at Fort Bragg. One of his good Ranger friends was an early 20s Private First Class, PFC, due to the specialized work that goes on at headquarters. From time to time, the building is locked down and only certain personnel are allowed inside the building at this time. When this happens, guard is posted outside to ensure that only those personnel are allowed in. On one particular day, the Private First Class was posted as security. Everything was going okay until a curious 2-star general not affiliated with the command started walking towards him. The Private First Class asked him for his ID, but the 2-star just told the young private to get out of his way. The Private First Class then did his job. He physically puts the 2-star on the ground, weapon drawn, and ordered him not to move. The 2-star continues yelling at the Private First Class, and eventually, the Private First Class commander comes out. The commander is a colonel. If you're not familiar with military rank, a colonel is a very high-ranking commissioned officer, but still 2 full grades below the 2-star general, a very significant difference. The colonel is not having any of this and tells the 2-star that he works directly for the 4-star and that he needs to get out of here immediately, an order which he follows. Eventually, the 2-star gives a full apology to the command. Apparently, he was curious about the activity going on around there, and he wanted to find out what was happening. My friend told me that his Ranger buddy was really shook up by the experience. He felt much better after a lot of praise from his superiors and a big commendation. I can't remember the specifics for his actions. Edit. This got a little more traction than I expected. Good way to pass the time as essential personnel. To all you troops working security and non-MPs detailed to security work out there regardless of service. Hope you stay safe and pandemic free. Well, that's it for today. Thank you for tuning in. If you enjoyed this video, please like it. If you enjoy these types of videos, please consider subscribing and hit that bell for notifications. That way you know when more videos are posted. Thank you for your continued support. And if you have not joined the Discord, the link's in the description below, along with all the other social media links associated with this account. Thank you all. And with that being said, we will see you next time.